In this lesson, we'll fine-tune our image references using the alt, width, and height tags. We've been working on a file called hubble.htm. We'll continue working with that file in this lesson. I'll open that file by dragging it onto the TextEdit icon on my desktop, and I'll also open the file in my default web browser so that I can see what it looks like as we get ready to get going here. Now, if we scroll down in our web browser, we can see two images of Saturn. And in our HTML file, we can see one of these image references is a local file, and the other a remote file. But in both cases, they're the same image. What I'd like to do is I'd like to add some attributes that allow me to govern the size of this image, and also to put some representative text on the page should the image download fail for any reason. Now, before you start manipulating images, you want to have an idea of what the size of the images actually are before you do anything. So I'm going to take a look inside the images folder, inside the chapter 4 folder, and find the local version of this image of Saturn. We can see that our image is 998 pixels wide by 1023 pixels tall. Now, that's important to know, to have a general idea as to how large that image is. That image is essentially almost the entire size of my monitor, which for my taste, as it pertains to this web page, is way too big. But before I start keying in any size that I want for a width and a height for this image, I have to keep in mind that as I start to resize this image, I may distort the way the image is presented. So if I adjust the height, I don't want to guess as to what the corresponding width would need to be. I want to let the computer tell me that. So I'll open this image in a graphics editor program such as Photoshop. The default image editing program on your computer very likely has a similar function to the one that I'm about to show you in Photoshop. In the image menu, if I bring up image size, I can see that the width and height, as we saw in Finder, when I set my units of measure to pixels, is 998 pixels wide by 1023 pixels tall. Now, if we want to display this image at a different dimension other than 998 by 1023, here in Photoshop, if I change this width to something smaller, say 723 pixels wide, notice that because I have constrained proportions selected, the corresponding height dimension is locked. And as I scale the width down, I'm getting the representative value for what the height should be, so that the overall proportions of the image are not distorted as we size this image down in our web browser. And I mean only in our web browser. When we use alt and width tags, we're not actually changing the image. We're just passing an instruction to the web browser to display the image at a different width and height than the image naturally has. So if I click Cancel here and close out of Photoshop and switch back over to my HTML file, I'm going to input the width and height that we saw in Photoshop a moment ago. I'm going to find the image reference for my local file, and after our source attribute, I'm going to type the attribute width, followed by an equals and quote quote, and height equals quote quote. And I'll increase the size of my HTML page a little bit. Within the width attribute, I'll type 723, and the corresponding height attribute will be 740 pixels. If I save this file, scroll back up to the top of my HTML file and reload the page, when I scroll down to see the first instance of Saturn, I can see the image is smaller. And I know the image is smaller because I know there's another image on this page which we haven't modified, and if I scroll down and find that image, I can see that image is bigger than the image that we just sized down with width and height tags as far as the display is concerned. Didn't change the file, just told the browser to display it differently. And I'm going to add one other attribute to this element. I'm going to add an alt tag, which reads ALT, or an alt attribute, I should say, equals quote quote, and whatever I put within the quotes is what will be displayed if for any reason the download of the image failed. The file was deleted, your internet connection cut out at a particular time, something caused the image to not display properly. When that happens, this alt text will be displayed in the image's place. And that text could read, Saturn as seen from the Cassini mission. And if I save my file and refresh in my web browser or reload on the Mac, I don't see any text here because the image downloaded properly. But if I right-click on the image using the right mouse button on your mouse and select Properties, here in Firefox you can see that the alternate text is present inside the page. You may not be able to see this on all browsers. So if I close this little Properties pop-up, since I have two images on this page, and both of those images are the same image, I'm just going to copy these width, height, and alt attributes and bring them down to the next image. From the Edit menu, I'll select Copy, jump down to the next image element, which happens to be the same image, and from the Edit menu, I'll select Paste. Only because I don't want to enter those tags again, and I know that they are relevant to that image if I want to have the same width, height, and alt attributes on that image. So if I save my file, switch over to my web browser and scroll down, and if I reload the page, that would help, I can see that the second image of Saturn has been reduced to be the same size as the first image.